Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have an amazing guest who I've been absolutely loving her content recently. We've got Sabrina Bendori, and make sure I pronounce that right because I'm not the best with names. I always get stumped up there. But first, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself. I know you're an author, a relationship coach, but how did you get into this love and relationship space?
Oh my gosh. That is like a 5-hour story. I will condense it down as short as possible. I've always been interested in relationships. And I think that when I was younger, like my late teens, I was just getting so tripped up because dating was nothing like it was in the movies. Like a guy would get my number and then never call me. I'm like, but in the movies, he gets your number and then your boyfriend, girlfriend. Like, what is going on? So I always had that inclination to understand human behavior. Then in college, I was in a very toxic, horrendous, codependent relationship with a narcissist. When that ended, it completely broke me. And I was so consumed with like understanding what happened, how this happened, why this happened. 2 years later, I got back in touch with him because I just couldn't let it go. Like it was still, even it wasn't actively on my mind, but it still lived within me. And I just couldn't move past it. And at that point, I think in my, not so wise 22-year-old mind, I was trying to make him jealous by telling him about like all the guys that were after me, and I was so in demand, and instead of wanting to get back together, he was like, you should write about this and like share your experiences. So we ended up starting a blog together. Not the smartest idea to get back in touch with an ex, but that did within, I mean, and this is already, pretty aging myself here, but this is back in 2009. Blogs were really just becoming a thing. Like a blog as a business wasn't really a thing, but it was kind of that blogger boom, that initial wave of that. So within, I don't know, a few years, that actually became like a full-time career for both of us. So I was writing about relationships more from a perspective of like, these are my experiences and this is what I'm learning along the way, not from the perspective of, oh, I'm an expert, because I was not at all at that point in time. But over the years, I just researched relationships intensely. I would interview countless men, and I started writing books about relationships. I started working with women. Obviously, my career has evolved so much because it's been over 16 years at this point, but that's where it started. But I no longer work with him anymore. I've broken free, and now I just work for myself.
I have to say that's kind of one of the most interesting origin stories possible. It's like I started a blog and became a business partner with my ex, who I was severely trying to detach from at one point.
Yes, I was trying to detach from, and then we started a business, and I was trying to get him back for the first few years of that business. Then I realized what a monster he truly was, and that ended up being a pretty it was okay for a while once I really kind of got over him and actually did detach, but then the whole thing collapsed, which at the time felt like the worst thing to happen to me, but really was the best thing ever to happen to me because it got me my freedom back, and I was able to do this on my own. But again, I really would like to write a novel about that whole story someday, like kind of like a fictionalized version of it, because it is quite a story, let me tell you.
Yeah, it does sound very interesting. Tell us a little bit about, I guess, your writing career when you started. Did you focus on like a specific area? Because some people talk about like, oh, how to get a guy, or
Mhm.
hey, how to break free from not needing closure. Like, what did you start talking about, and how's that kind of evolved as you've grown?
In the beginning, it was primarily about understanding men. I had it in my mind that if I could understand men, if I could understand why they act the way they do, I would have the upper hand and I would never get hurt anymore. So that was my mission. It was all, why doesn't he text back? Why does he get your number and not call you? Why does he ghost you? I don't even know if that was the term we used back in that day, but why do men withdraw? Why do they pull away? Why does he act? What the mixed signals? That was really my focus. My first book was actually 10 things every woman needs to know about men, because the when I was writing about relationships, I had this one article called Five Things Every Woman Needs to Know About Men. And it went viral back in the day. Back in the day, what viral looked like is like, on Google, it exploded and it was just getting tons of comments and tons of shares. And so I was like, you know what? People really want to know about this. So I interviewed tons of men. I created this anonymous survey. I sent it out far and wide. So that's really what the focus was on in the beginning. Yeah.
Understanding the male mind. I mean, I think that's why most people will follow me, as they're like, hey, this guy's a guy and he's telling me what men think. So tell us a little bit of the things that you feel like are misconceptions around what women are seeing guys do and what they like, what's actually happening.
Oh gosh, I mean, there's so many. I think it's evolved. It's evolved so much from when I started this back in the day to now. So I guess I'll focus on like the
Yeah.
now. One interesting difference that I noticed is that back then there was much more of a curiosity. Women were very much interested in understanding male behavior. Now they don't care. They're like, they're all just like jerks. And how do I focus on my healing? So there's kind of that divide. And I think that there is that a lot of misdirected anger towards men, which is another topic. But I think that what needs to be said, and that this can sometimes be a little controversial, is that men and women are different. We're different. Our brains are wired different. The way we process emotions and relationships are different. And I think the problem that we're in today is that people will label men as, oh, like he's a commitment phobe, or he has an avoidant attachment style, when like sometimes he's just not that into you, or he's a narcissist. And like, as somebody who does have personal experience with a narcissist, I'm not someone to throw that term around, and it's not a term to throw around lightly. But like sometimes, no, sometimes he's just a selfish jerk. So I think that today the problem is that we're overdiagnosing everyone, and we're kind of making it like they're the bad guy, they're flawed, there's something wrong with them, they're pathological, when sometimes that's not really the case. So I think that there's just too much information out there, and it's hard to really source like what's real and what's not. But I also think that there's just a lack of real, I guess, understanding and compassion on both ends. I feel like men have the same towards women, and women have the same towards men. And so I try to like bridge that gap. I mean, mostly I speak to women on male behavior, but I do think that it's very easy to get lost in how his behavior is affecting you and projecting onto him, rather than understanding what's going on within him.
Yeah, I often come back to, show me the incentives and I'll show you the behavior. Because, yeah, a lot of times it
I
is
like
the guy's
that.
not that interested in you, or it's like, well, look at how the chessboard is. I can't hope that the chess piece moves a different way. It's just a different game. I look at the board and I try to think, okay, why is he acting this way? So talk to us a
Right.
little bit, because you came in during the blog days. Technology has rapidly changed. I often think like technology is the only thing that doesn't seem to make relationships better, but I could be maybe more pessimistic on that.
Right. I mean, look, like anything, there's pros and cons, because I remember, I mean, I know that women in the 90s, like on, as portrayed
Mhm.
on Sex and the City, they thought that like, oh, dating's impossible. We have it rough. And then those of us from the early aughts who were dating were like, oh, dating's impossible. We have it rough. There's always going to be an iteration of like a reason why dating is so hard. Technology has made things tough because we're stuck in this paradox of choice. Like if we're going to focus on like the apps, for instance, never ever have we had access to so many different people, and it's too much. It's very overwhelming. There's always that feeling of what's next? What's next? What is there something better? So I think that that's a problem. I think that social comparisons is a problem. I think that people are struggling with their self-worth more than ever because of what we're seeing on social media. It's like hard to believe that once upon a time we only had access to like our circles. We had access to our family and our friends. We didn't know that like the fitness routines and skincare routines of like and of these perfect strangers, and we're not seeing these highlight reels of these couples. Like I kind of love the couple Instagram accounts, but sometimes it's like, okay, like this is a bit much. Like you're seeing this like, oh, they're so in love, they're so mushy, like why can't I have that, when obviously that's not what their relationship looks like all the time. So I think that it's just feeding into our insecurities. And it's again like, in terms of men, the nature of a man is always to seek and always to hunt. And the fact that they are inundated with so much at all times, I feel like makes it harder for men to want to settle down. And I feel like that's partially why women and men are waiting longer and longer and longer until they settle down and commit. And that's why I think we are in what people are dubbing a relationship recession, where people are staying single for longer. Obviously, I'm speaking in generalities. This isn't true like all across the board, but I'm seeing a lot of that. But at the same time, I know so many people that met their spouse through the dating apps or even Instagram or Facebook. So it's open, and especially for people, a lot of women I work with live in like these very, middle America areas where like the populations are teeny tiny and they're like, how am I ever going to find someone? And having access to so many people gives them that opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have just being, in a certain circumstance. So we can argue both ways why it's good and why it's not so good.
Yeah, well, pros and cons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like this statement: is there's no solutions, there's only trade offs. There's no perfect guy,
Yeah.
there's no perfect
Uh-huh.
woman. It's always like a stack rank of different values. You're like, yeah, you're not gonna find the 10 out of 10 beautiful guy that's also
Right.
like really understands attachment styles and is
Yep.
actually reading the literature. If he exists, I haven't seen him.
Yes. 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 Exactly.
So one thing I did want to mention, because you talked about couples relationship accounts, and I ran one of these in the past, and I can tell you from behind the scenes, a lot of people are miserable because they ended up starting that relationship account. It brings in a lot more attention to the couple than may
Right.
potentially be healthy for that couple, and they
Right.
end up
Yeah.
devolving. Or people stay in the relationship because they're like, well, now we're like a famous couple together, like we can't really break up
Right.
because of all of that. So just know behind the scenes, I know a lot of these people, they're not always the most happy. So what you see online is not always as it appears. But I want to talk a little bit more about you and some of your writing, because I know you are an amazing writer. So tell us a little bit about some of your books, and we can kind of go into some of the main concepts here and things that people are kind of missing.
Sure, absolutely. So, my first book was 10 Things Every Woman Needs to Know About Men, self-explanatory.
So much fun. I get
That
that one.
one
I understand.
that one was a fun one. My next book was You're Overthinking It. I don't even remember what the subheadline of that book was, but here, it's behind me. Um, Find lifelong love by being your true self. And now my new book is Detached: How to heal, let go, how to let go, heal, and become irresistible.
I love
Um,
it.
I've always loved writing. That's always been my thing. I feel like I've really been given one talent in this world, and it was that. And I went through so much in my dating life. It was so hard. It was such a struggle. I really went through it. I learned every lesson the hard way. I had to hit rock bottom like multiple times, and I write about all of this. And so I feel like this is my purpose. I'm a good writer. I'm good at expressing these things in a way where people feel seen. And I've been through a lot of shit. Okay, like this is what I want to do. I mean, in time, I had to learn to be a good talker. I always felt like I'm not as good at speaking as I am at writing, but I've come a long way in that area. But that's yeah, that those are my books.
Well, I have to say you're a great speaker. So
Oh,
if you
thank
started at a different point, you've improved drastically from there, I'm sure. So let's talk a little bit about your overthinking it, because I feel I see this a lot with the people I talk to and the people that are responding to me. Like they're really looking for maybe some kind of hidden motivations that don't exist.
you.
Talk to us a little bit about that book and kind of what the theme was of it.
Okay, so You're Overthinking It is really my book about understanding relationship dynamics overall and making it as crystal clear as possible so that you're not making yourself crazy trying to figure everything out. So that one is a lot about just explaining, some of it is explaining male behavior, a lot of it is explaining relationship dynamics, and a lot of it is about anchoring yourself and not feeding into the anxiety, because the overthinking happens because we want a sense of control, and so many people are so anxious, and our anxiety is in proportion to our ability to tolerate uncertainty, and people who cannot tolerate uncertainty will overthink themselves to death. I really see this a lot with my clients who are very type A, and they're type A, they're killing it in their careers and it's served them well, but they kind of have these systems in mind. I know if I work hard, I know if I learn this skill, then this will be the result. But with dating, that's not always working. Like, okay, I work out, I look good, I go out, I'm on the apps, but like I'm still not finding my person. What is wrong here? And it's not just the type A women. We see this with so many different types of women. We cannot find any comfort or okayness in that uncertainty. We just want to know, when am I going to find him? When is it going to happen? Am I going to end up alone? My clock is ticking. And that feeds into this scarcity mindset, the spiral, the panic, and we make things so complicated when they're not. Actually, my first book, it was an ebook, so it's not on Amazon or anything. And now it lives in my inner circle membership, but it was called He's Not That Complicated, because he's not that complicated. Like and I think that like the biggest light bulb for me was realizing that. So You're Overthinking It is really just to calm you down and really distill dating and relationships down to what it's really about, not what we make it about. we make it so much more significant because we attach so much of our worth onto how other people are responding to us, onto the success or lack of success that we're having in our love lives. So that's what that book was really about.
So talk to some of the women in the audience that are like, I hear what you're saying. I definitely am overthinking things, but like, yeah, my clock is ticking. I want to have kids. I feel like, I'm mid-30s and I just don't know if it's going to happen for me. Like, how can I not put this undue importance
Right.
on finding a partner?
Okay, step one with modern medicine and science, with where we're at, being in your mid 30s does not mean the same thing it once did. And first things first, freeze your eggs. You're worried about having babies, freeze your eggs. If you can't afford to freeze your eggs, then figure out a financial plan where you will be able to save enough money. And don't come to me for that. I am not the finance girl, but like find a way to create a nest egg to freeze your eggs. Okay, get that out of the way. In terms of mindset, worrying about not having babies is not bringing you any closer to having babies. Worrying about not having found your soulmate is not bringing you any closer to finding your soulmate. And I'm not saying to invalidate the pain and to say, yay, I'm on my own, toxic positivity, great single. I'm not saying to celebrate something that you don't want, but you have a choice. So we can hold both. We can say, this is really hard and painful. I thought I would be in a different place in my life. Now we can spiral and we can fall into the pits of despair. And if you're doing that, I totally understand. I have done it myself many times of feeling sorry for yourself and it's never going to happen. And what am I going to do? And like thinking about it. Or we can say, you know what? I can either live in the land of things that are out of my control, or I can live in the land of what is under my control. And what is under my control is I can take control of my health, go see my doctor, make sure I'm healthy, make sure my hormones are in check, make sure my vitamin levels are in check, get on a good supplement regimen to like optimize my health because we know that that's tied to fertility. I know I can look my best because that's just going to make me feel good. I know that I can push myself maybe a little harder to get out there and meet people. I know that I can advocate for myself. I can ask people. No one's thinking about you. This is what you need to realize. I mean, I used to make this mistake. I would be like, well, I don't want to ask her if her boyfriend knows anyone to set me up with because surely if he knew someone, he would have told me. Nobody's thinking about you. So if you have friends in your network, they have boyfriends, they have husbands, they have coworkers who are men, advocate for yourself. Say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Come up with your elevator pitch. Do you know anyone for me? People are so embarrassed to do this. There is no shame in doing this. So I can push myself a little harder. I can make a goal of like trying to go on one date a week. I can expand my dating app parameters. Maybe I'll lower the height restrictions. I'll increase the age restrictions. Like we limit ourselves. Okay, that's going to open me up to so many other possibilities. That is what's under my control, and it is so much more empowering to live in a space where you are taking control over what is under your control rather than feeling defeated by what is not under your control. So that's what I would say. Like you want to choose a path that if you're making a choice either way, either you're choosing to believe I'm going to end up alone or you're choosing to believe I will find my person when the time is right. So why not make the choice that aligns with how you want things to be rather than the choice that is your nightmare scenario?
Yeah, and I hear that a lot, and I just listened to I think it was your most recent episode of your podcast talking about like, am I going to die alone? And
Yeah.
I think people would be, or maybe they wouldn't be surprised. Like I hear that question a lot. Like
I
you
know,
talk to
right?
people that are struggling with that right now. So we talked a little bit about like, okay, freeze the eggs, take some of the time worries off the table. Okay, start looking at the variables that you can change. Like, hey, are you going on one date a week? Are you,
Mhm.
investing in your health? Are you doing this, that, and the other thing? Talk to them a little bit about like, yeah, how they get over this like ruminating fear that they're like, this just isn't going to work for me.
You get over the fear by deciding you are ready to be done with it. By deciding. And this isn't just a relationship thing. I'm able to speak about this with such conviction because I put it into practice in my own life all the time of either spiraling about how terrible things are and it's never going to change, or saying, you know what, like these are the circumstances and we can't control the cards we've been dealt, but we can control playing the hell out of the hand that we've been dealt. And that's your choice and that is your power. In terms of the thought thing, like thinking and the ruminating, here's the thing. Thoughts are going to come at you and you can't stop them. I do this exercise with my coaching group where I say, okay, everyone, don't think any thoughts. And I'm going to time you. Let's see how long we can do it for. Okay. And thinking the thought, I'm not thinking thoughts is a thought. So that doesn't count. Guess how long they last with that? How long can they
Well,
go without thinking any
probably
thought?
3 seconds based
Yep,
off of my
exactly.
meditation practice.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yes. You cannot stop thinking thoughts. It's impossible. But what you can control is which thoughts am I going to give energy to? Which thoughts? Am I going to give energy? Am I going to feed that beast of you're going to die alone? Because that's your choice. You don't have to. The thought's going to come in. We can't control that. We can control, am I going to spiral? Am I now, okay, I'm thinking the thought I'm going to end up alone. And now am I going to go through the whole list of every failed relationship I've ever had and every time I've ever been rejected and anytime I reached out to a guy in the apps and he didn't reach out to me. Am I going to do that? Or am I going to instead think about, you know what? I am an amazing woman. I have so much going for me. Of course, I'm going to find my person. Now, that's not going to feel natural to you at first, but that doesn't mean it's wrong because it feels unnatural. Anytime we're shifting, it's unnatural. It's the same as, let's say, like you're someone who wants to get in shape. The first day you go to that gym, you are going to feel like I am not supposed to be here. My body doesn't know how to move this way. I don't know how to use the equipment. I feel like a phony. I feel like a fraud. But you keep going, and then you feel more comfortable. And then it becomes a little bit more natural. And over time, if you don't go to the gym, that feels unnatural and that feels weird. It's the same with managing your thoughts. Over time, it's going to feel crazy for you to think the thought I'm going to end up alone because you're like, obviously, I'm not going to. So we have to channel our power by taking control of what we're in control of and surrendering the rest and trusting that it will be okay. That's why the name of my podcast is You Will Be Okay, because that's a thing that I was always saying the most to myself and saying the most to my clients.
Yeah, we're all going to make it. There's a great book. If people aren't necessarily creative inclined or artist inclined, I still recommend reading it. It's called The Artist's Way. And they talk a lot about if you just got 10% better at self talk,
Yeah.
you would improve your life dramatically because we don't find it cringe at all to bludgeon ourselves with defeating talk. But to say, like, oh, you're great, I'm going to find my person is somehow cringe in our minds, which
I
I
know.
find to be quite odd. But trust me, I was there.
Right. I know. I know. And the fact is, our brains are working against us here. There's a negativity bias, not a positivity bias. When every time I start my group coaching calls, I'm always like, okay, everyone, like, give me your wins of the week. And they're so hesitant to find anything to celebrate. And yesterday on the class, I was just like, okay, if I had opened up with everybody, give me your complaints of the week, we wouldn't stop talking, right? Like, and we could go on and on about that. It's much harder to channel ourselves to see the good, but it's just so necessary because it brings you so much peace. I get it. I know that you feel like you're just being realistic by ruminating on this nightmare scenario, but honestly, like, if you do feel that way, ask yourself, what is the evidence that I'm going to end up alone? Like, what's the evidence? And once you speak it out loud, you'll realize how baseless it is, and you're so attached to this idea over things that don't even make any sense. Like, really, okay, some people will say to me, well, I've never had a relationship. I've only had situationships. And it's like, okay, yeah. So, like, how does that mean that you're never going to find someone? Maybe I have so many clients like this where they've never had a boyfriend or an official boyfriend. And the next guy that they dated became their husband. Okay. So you weren't someone who was meant to have 100 relationships. And, the girls who have dated and gone through breakup after breakup, they'll tell you that that's a gift because that's exhausting going through all that heartbreak. You can also say, well, all I've had are failed relationships and thus I'll never have another one. Again, like, a relationship's going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to last forever or it's going to end. And so until you get to the one that lasts forever, they're all going to end. So once you speak out the evidence for this worst case scenario fear, you realize that it's flimsy. And if you speak out the evidence for the alternative belief, which is I am going to find my person, you will find so many more legs to stand on. But most of us don't push ourselves in this way.
Yeah, and it's also, if people like a very scientific lens as well, it's like the reticular activating system. So for people
Yes.
that don't realize this is if your friend buys a new car or gets a new handbag and you start noticing that everywhere, God didn't just start dropping that new car and handbag out of the sky. Like
Right.
your brain has so much input that it's trying to filter things that you already know. So you're like, I only date like I only attract avoidance. I only attract cheaters. Your brain just hears cheaters, cheaters, avoidance, avoidance.
Yeah.
Like you said to focus on the things you don't want. So I don't know. I assume your book Detached is a bit about that. So let's transition to
Yeah.
because I've seen detachment become a very popular term. Talk to us a little bit for people that don't know what detachment is. What is detachment in your lens?
Detachment is knowing that you are worthy, that you are lovable, that you are good enough without needing anyone to tell you so. It is about learning to self source rather than outsource. When we become too attached, the converse of that, we are attaching so much of our self-worth based on how the world around us is reacting to us, and especially based on our relationships, especially based on, am I being chosen, am I worthy of love? So detachment is being just rooted in your self-worth. And where people mix this up is they think that it means being cold, being aloof, being avoidant. No, that's not what we want. We don't want you to be completely dissociated. And I lived in that space for a long time after being wrecked by a heartbreak, and I was completely dissociated. No, we don't want that. You care. You absolutely care. You're in touch with your emotions. You're in touch with who you are. You show up, you're present. But you can love without losing yourself, and you can lose without spiraling. And that's what detachment is.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about like how people actually bring this into practice because they're like, I don't know,
Yeah.
how can I detach from somebody I want to be my husband, or how can I detach from like these very serious dating things where I keep getting done dirty?
Right. Okay. Well, detachment really comes down to building your self worth and
Mhm.
really undoing all of those limiting beliefs that we carry. And it's really about choosing yourself rather than the pursuit of being chosen. And yes, I know all too well how painful it is when you meet someone and you're like, oh my God, this person is perfect for me, but they don't see it too. And if only I could get them to see it. Instead, you need to feel worthy enough to know if they don't see it, it's because they are not my person and it doesn't mean anything about me. So this book goes really deep into why the mechanisms at play in why we attach onto certain people. And a lot of the time, it has nothing to do with them. It's either what they represent or it is our subconscious trying to heal an old wound. This is especially true. For example, if you are someone who is always going for emotionally avoidant men or men who are taken or just not available to you, a lot of the time it's because what's familiar to you, what's familiar to your nervous system is emotional inconsistency, chaos, or emotional avoidance, because that's the type of love that you received from one or both of your caregivers. And so that's what feels normal to you. And usually, whoever you're drawn to and whoever you're attracting is a mirror to things that you need to work on within yourself. So most women who are only going for emotionally avoidant people, it's because they're emotionally avoidant. But they're emotionally avoidant in a different way because you can want a relationship very badly, but if you're terrified of being hurt, of being vulnerable, of being taken advantage of, then that fear is going to override the desire. So you feel like, no, I want this. I'm open to it, but you're so scared of actually having it that you go for people that can't give you what you want, thus proving your original belief, which is that I'm not really worthy of love.
Yeah, I mean, we have to talk about on the podcast that like, yeah, your inner world is a reflection of your outer world, or sorry, your outer world is a
Outer
reflection of
world.
your inner world, and you have
Yeah.
to, if you look at life like a mirror, you have to smile first. You can't just wait for a mirror to smile back at you. It won't
Right.
smile until you do it first. Like it's just impossible. So talk to him a little bit, being like, okay, I hear what you're saying. You know, I'm attracting like toxic people, and like clearly that's some kind of manifestation of old wounds that I have. They're like, I hear you,
Mhm.
but how do I fix that? Like, how do I start to love myself more or heal some of these attachment wounds?
Okay, so the most important place to start is to trace these wounds back to their source. So we really need to look at where did this originate? Where did this feeling of I need to overfunction, I need to perform, I need to be the people pleaser in order to earn love? Oftentimes it was rooted in our relationship with our parents. Sometimes it could have been friendships that like those early experiences, especially for girls, those middle school friendships, an early relationship. Where did I learn this? And then how can I unlearn it? So we look at the behavioral adaptation that developed that I have to put other people before me. We trace it back to its source. And then we replace it with a belief that is much more rooted in reality, which is that I deserve love and I deserve consideration and I deserve to be a priority and my needs deserve to be heard. We also, a big part of healing is healing your inner child. So we trace it back to its source, which is typically in childhood. And then what you need to learn is how to reparent that inner child. And what that means is you give yourself the type of love and support and validation that you needed but never got. Because as a child, it is about survival because a child cannot survive without their parents. They need their parents to love them because they will die if somebody's not taking care of them. Now, in adulthood, obviously, we have jobs, we have our own money, we can take care of ourselves, but those behavioral adaptations are still in place. And this is why rejection can feel so intense and it could feel like life or death. It really is so profoundly painful because it taps into those same feelings and it activates your nervous system in the same way. So it's about giving yourself that meaning, like something doesn't go your way, or you feel like you messed up in a meeting, or you're ashamed of something you did, rather than beating yourself up about it and going on about like how you're so bad, you're so terrible. Instead, it's you did the best you could. Like you were amazing. You were great. You were wonderful. Whatever it is that you needed to hear from your primary caregivers, you speak to yourself that way. Because instead, we all have this inner critic that pretty much mirrors however our more difficult parents spoke to us, because their criticisms became part of our inner monologue. And so that is a huge step in healing, and also undoing those limiting beliefs. And we do that by really challenging them and understanding what put them there in the first place, and then rewiring it by replacing it with a new belief and stacking on evidence to support that new belief. And
So
changing the
what
way you speak to yourself also. That's a huge one as well.
Yeah, the inner critic is so
Mhm.
debilitating at times. Let's talk a little bit about like so I'll see this dichotomy where people will be like, "Oh, do I have to heal in order to get back into dating? Like, should I take time away from the dating world, or is it just kind of like we're patching a ship as it's moving and we just continue to date?" Do you have like a perspective on should you like go do a bunch of therapy and then like take a pause on dating, or what's your general perspective?
I think that it really depends on the person. If you're at a phase where you are so burnt out on dating and feeling really angry and resentful and frustrated, then it might be time to take a break. But I also don't feel like you have to be 100% healed in order to go out and date, because if you frame it that way, you're never going to date, because no one's ever going to be 100% healed. I think that it's very important to have an awareness of what your patterns are and what you're working through. And if you know, okay, I have some anxious attachment style, or an avoidant attachment style, or I shut down sometimes, I have an awareness of this and at least some set of tools to work through that. I think that's important, because where relationships can get so tricky is when we're blaming our partner for things that are really under our control, like for triggering us and making us feel not good enough. He didn't make you feel not good enough. You already didn't feel good enough. And now, and something relatively minor typically happened, and then it's activating that old wound. Or maybe he's making you feel not good enough because you're going for people that make you feel not good enough because you have that unworthiness wound within you. So self-awareness is the piece above all to really focus on. I would say really takes an inventory of your dating history. Go one by one. Okay, what happened in this relationship? Why did it end? What was my interpretation of the ending? So for example, the relationship, it ended because he cheated on me. My interpretation, he cheated on me because I just wasn't good enough. Like he found someone better. And the men that I love are always going to leave me for somebody better. And then you ask yourself, what's an alternative explanation here? Alternative explanation is, I don't know, he was a narcissist and he just needed a better source of ego fuel. So we have to start by challenging like those beliefs that we've adopted about ourselves, and then seeing the areas where we're the common denominator. So we have to recognize the areas where, okay, this, I need to work on my self-worth. I'm aware of that. I'm going to start where I'm going to implement some tools, and then just putting them into practice every day. And I think if you do that, you can also date. But I was somebody that took many breaks from dating. I mean, I was somebody that really needed, I would get burnt out and I would need a break. Other people are not like that. So it depends on the person.
Now, one thing I want to talk about, because you've obviously been writing for quite a bit of time. You've seen, love languages come out. You've seen attachment styles. Talk to us a little bit about like for women that are like, oh my gosh, there's so much in this relationship sphere. Like, what the heck do I even focus on? Like, obviously, we focused on like healing and internal narrative, but talk to them a little bit about the things that you found particularly helpful in your journey.
Oh gosh. So much. I mean, for me, what was really helpful was focusing on myself and creating a life that I loved, because I was relying way too much on a relationship and a man to make me happy. And I had this infamous summer of me. I wrote about it in Detached. It's like the opening of Detached, where I was at this point, I was 29. I really wanted to find my person. I always knew that I wanted to have a lot of kids. I always wanted to have 4 kids, and that actually is what I have. I have four. um, and I was just so frustrated with dating and noticing that I was making the same mistakes over and over again. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to completely take a break from dating. No more dating, no more men right now. I'm going to focus completely on me. I focused on looking the way I wanted to look. I ate clean. I got in really good shape, and I finally like had a body that I was really proud of. And that counts for a lot, because that really affects how you show up. I really poured myself into my friendships. It wasn't just like I felt like before, yeah, my friendships, they meant a lot to me, but the focus was always men and it was always leaning on my friends, like when something went wrong with a man. Instead, it was just about really forming strong friendships just for the sake of having that connection, which really filled me up. I focused on travel. I was no longer like, oh, I want to go to Italy with a guy once I have a boyfriend. No, I really want to go to Italy. And I'm going to go with a girlfriend, and I can go again once I'm in a relationship. I focus on my career, on writing, on what lights me up, on my passions. And I really just focus on loving life every day, just doing things that brought me joy. Because when you create that amazing, fulfilling life, it's like if you build it, he will come. All of a sudden, it's not just like the men that come, it's so much else opens up for you because you're just magnetic. And this is why that's the third part of the book is being magnetic, because once you're in that space of like just being so tapped into your purpose, your mission, and just radiating joy, it just becomes, you become like a super attractor in all areas. So I think more than anything, create a life that you truly love, and don't put any contingencies on it. Like, well, I can't really be happy until I have a relationship. That's really not a good way of looking at things.
Yeah, so you talk a little bit about like building a life you love. So let's talk a little bit about what you think are either like good activities or things. Cause like, let's say we join a feminist book club. We may not be meeting a lot of men there, or we
Uh-huh.
may be joining gardening. We might not meet that many men there. Is there some kind of almost like or like analysis where you're like, well, if I join the art charity, I may meet some people or there may be crossover, or it's just like, hey, build a life you're gonna love and you'll be magnetic either way.
Build a life that you're going to love, and you're going to be magnetic either way. And stop focusing so much on like, where's the men? Where's the men? Where's the men? Because that puts you in chaser mode. Then you're in hunter mode, and men don't want to be hunted. Like that is, it's just not a good energy. You can have the awareness of, I want to meet someone, but it's not good when you're coming from a place of, am I going to meet men? Am I going to meet men? I have so many clients that are like, I went out this weekend with my friends and we went to this amazing concert or whatever, but like I was so bummed I didn't get hit on. I didn't meet anyone. You can't attach your happiness to whether or not you're meeting a guy and you're getting attention. It should just be, I just want to be present and enjoy myself and enjoy this moment. And yes, also at the same time, take action steps to find your person, but you can't live your whole life around, where am I going to meet someone? Also, if you are in a feminist book club, like they know guys, they have brothers, some of them might have boyfriends who have friends. So you are opening up your network. The more you can open up your network, that's also a really good thing. But again, there's a balance. Like we want to be focusing on what fills me up, what makes me happy. And I'm not saying to ever deny the want or the need for our relationship, but at the same time, we have to eliminate that desperation of like, I need to find someone. I need to find someone. Just, okay, I have this awareness. Like I'm putting effort into it. I'm putting myself out there. I'm advocating for myself, but none of this desperate chaser energy.
Yeah, and for women listening, if you've ever had a guy that's so desperate to court you, you know that's kind of off-putting, right? Like it's a
Yes,
weird
very.
energy, and you don't
Yeah.
want to put that out as well. And also, like you don't know where. So the feminist book club example, you don't know where people are going to introduce you. I went to salsa dancing class, didn't meet anyone there, but that led me to living in Colombia, and that's why you guys are listening to this podcast today. Like you never know where things like the world will conspire to give you what you want when you're very clear about what you want.
Right. Wait, how did living in Colombia start the podcast? I don't know the story.
So, oh yeah, so I joined a salsa dancing thing, and
Hmm.
then COVID knocked out all of the salsa dancing classes. So I was like, well,
Oh,
I'm going loco in my head in my tiny
yeah.
apartment, and so I learned Spanish. That got me to move to Colombia to improve my Spanish, which sent me on this whole content world.
Amazing.
Yeah. So you just that's why I always tell people like just keep moving forward and keep looking for opportunities. Like the
Right.
universe puts things in your path and don't say no to a lot of things. Like obviously say no to the things you need to say no to, but like
Yeah.
sometimes like a chance encounter really does yield a lot of results.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I have story after story about that. That's so true. That's why yes, it's so important to choose yourself rather than the pursuit of being chosen by someone else. That's really the most important.
Absolutely. And when you're doing things you like, you are more happy. And
Yeah.
thus more people are going to approach you. So some people will be like, at least for me, is they'll be like, oh, I went to this bar, but nobody approached me. So I was sad. I
Mhm.
was like, well, did you want to be at the bar? They're like, no, not really. I'm like, okay, well, do you usually approach the person that doesn't seem like they're having fun?
Right. No, no. It's just, it's a very repellent energy. And so many women get so caught up in like the looks and what I look like, what I look like. But I have so many women I've worked with who are so objectively beautiful and guys don't go near them. And I know why. It's because they're miserable. They're miserable and insecure and it radiates like out of their pores. People don't realize that our nervous systems link up and we can pick up on how someone feels about themselves. We can pick up on their energy. We are scanning. There are so many micro cues that our subconscious picks up on. And that's why, like, with certain people, we're just are like, they're great objectively, but I just don't, I just, it just makes me feel like I want to get away. Interestingly, one thing that came up in my surveys of all the men for my first book, 10 Things Every Woman Needs to Know About Men, the one thing I was the most curious about was why do guys suddenly lose interest? Because I had had this experience so many times where a guy would be like courting me fervently and super into me. We'd go on a few really great dates and then it would just fizzle out and it would just end. And I'm like, why, why? And the most common answer I got was, I don't know why. It was just a feeling. And I kind of know why, because what happens is when you're in that more insecure, desperate chaser mode, you're not present. You can't be. You're not connecting with the person in front of you. You're connecting with the worried thoughts in your own mind. Does he like me? How does he feel about me? He looks a little bit bored. He was looking at his phone. Like, I've been checking his Instagram. I saw he followed a new girl. Like, is he dating other people? You're in this worried, anxious mode, and you can't form a connection that way. And so the guy is like, objectively, she's great. Obviously, that's why he went on a few dates with you. Like, he saw potential. And he's like, I can't put my finger on it. I just don't feel any desire to date her further. And I think that's what it comes down to. So the guy can't even articulate it. He can't even articulate. I mean, sometimes they can. Sometimes they had tangible, like she complained too much or she talked negatively about people, whatever. But a lot of the time, it is just a feeling. And it comes from those anxious thoughts, those worried, those am I being chosen? Rather than and because so many times, like, so often we ask the question like, how does he feel about me? When really we should be asking ourselves, how do I feel about me when I'm with him? That's what
And,
matters.
and are you choosing him or are you hoping he likes you?
Yes. Sorry, I just need a tissue break. I have a cold right
Oh,
now.
no worries at all.
Just edit
Well, I
that.
know we're about to wrap pretty soon because I don't want to steal too much of your time, but you've been an amazing guest. Tell
Oh,
us
thank
a little bit about any kind of like programs, any kind of books. What should the ladies be on the lookout for from you?
Okay, sure. So definitely check out my new book, Detached. I mean, check out all my books, but that one is the brand new one. I also have an 8-week coaching program called You Will Be Okay, where we really do some intense inner work to really take everything that's living in your subconscious and bring it to the conscious. I have an inner circle membership where you get all my content, like 16 years worth of content, ebooks, master classes. I also do live monthly calls where I just like teach on different topics, answer questions. I have a podcast called You Will Be Okay, and you can find me on social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Sabrina Bendori.
Absolutely. I will drop your link down in the description. Tell everyone. Till the next episode. Ciao.